Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being with us. I'm Dean Hebel. I'm the Executive Director of 10 at the Top. And as we were saying a minute ago, kind of old home day for some of us getting to see some folks we have not gotten to talk to in a while. This is one of the virtual workshops related to the Creating a Safer Upstate initiative. Today, we are specifically looking at how to connect law enforcement and the community through the National Night Out program with our guest, Matt Peskin, and then just holistically going to ask some of our community leaders who are on the call to share their insights and things they've done. For those who are new to this initiative, we started about 2 years ago through 10 at the Top, the initiative of Creating a Safer Upstate, initially with a discovery committee, and Stan Davis, who is on the call, was our facilitator for that process as we started to hear from law enforcement and community leaders about ways we could try to work together or discover what is being done and what more we can do here in the upstate to build partnerships and collaboration between our law enforcement and our community. And I think the good news that we've learned in this 2 years is that there are a lot of specific and strategic efforts underway in our communities. What we have also learned is, unfortunately, they often are underfunded, and with law enforcement, like everybody else, being somewhat understaffed, it is a challenge to have as many of the community engagements as both our communities and our law enforcement leaders would like, but it is something that there is a lot of effort and understanding of the value of. And so what we began last year was a series of virtual workshops on Creating a Safer Upstate. You can see our next one there is June 13th, and I saw Matt Hamby and Keisha Nelson and Jim Shue, who are our leaders for those sessions. So you can come back next Monday for that session. And then Justine is going to talk a little bit about some of the other efforts that we have tried to partner and work with law enforcement and communities to have some specific opportunities. And then we will hear from Matt Peskin. Again, the idea is, how can we help communities to enable them to be successful in having programs that connect law enforcement and the community. I think National Night Out is one of the best known of those types of initiatives. We've heard from a lot of law enforcement officials and communities here in the upstate that do have some of those. So we'll hear from Matt and then call on some of our community leaders who are doing those efforts to share a little bit. If you're interested in sharing, please put in the chat, and Justine and I will call on you when the time comes. But now, Justine, I'll turn it over to you, and you can talk about the things we have coming up and then introduce our special guest.
Thanks, Dean. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk about National Night Out. I just wanted to share that we do, as Dean mentioned, we do have our Beyond the Shield event coming up next week. You can register for that down at the bottom. You'll see 10atthetop.org/events. And that is a super easy Zoom. You don't have to drive anywhere. The use of analytics to drive policing will be the topic, and Dr. Lee Hunt from the Greenville Police Department and also Michelle Covington from USC Upstate will be here to talk to us about how statistics drive police work. And then we have, if you are out in the Seneca area, we have an in-person event in conjunction with Tri-County Tech next Tuesday evening. And that is a law enforcement community leader forum. So as it's called, it's really just roundtables, very casual. We have a bunch of roundtables in the room, and we connect law enforcement with community leaders, and they talk about specific issues that we provide for them and then report back to the room. And we've done 2 of these so far with Tri-County Tech, and it's super interesting to see how people connect and what they learn. And I would think after talking about the topics a couple different times, I would know more than I do, but every time I learn something. And it's great to get out and see the different community leaders getting more in touch with their law enforcement officers and vice versa. And then Fist Bump Fridays, we've got a couple more of those coming up this year. That is law enforcement at the school when they come in, the kids come in or go out, little fist bump, have a great weekend. And it's just a nice way for kids and families to see that law enforcement is part of their community and build some of those relationships. And we try to get some media out there so they can get it online. And I love to be able to go out and be a part of that because it's just super sweet at the elementary schools. And then today, of course, at the top here, we have Matt Peskin with National Night Out. He has been doing this for years and years, even though he's super young. And so he's going to talk to us today about, some of you already know, but he'll talk to us about the benefits of signing up for National Night Out, for registering, and then we'll do some Q&A. And also, as Dean mentioned, talk to some of you and get your feedback on what you do, what you're planning this year, tips you might like to share with the group, and things that you have experienced so far. So without further ado, Mr. Matt Peskin, take it away.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's always a fun time to talk with other coordinators, people who support National Night Out, support police community partnerships. So it's fun for me, and I'm here to answer all of your questions, most of them. I've been doing this will be the 39th annual National Night Out. So it's been around for a long time. I can give you a brief little history of how it developed and some of the things. I don't want to lecture you because I'm sure you guys have questions and stuff, but I'll give you a little bit of how it came to be. In the mid 80s, I had this idea. It's basically from the National Association of Town Watch, which is a nonprofit organization comprised of citizen crime watch groups and law enforcement agencies across the country. And the association began in '81. And in 1984, I proposed this idea to our board that, and the thinking behind it is, before I tell you what I said to them and what their reaction was that, you know, there's these thousands and thousands at that time, crime watch groups across the country, but they're kind of like our little foxholes all over the place. Nobody really knew who they were. You saw the signs, this area patrolled by whoever, but you never really saw the people. And to add to that, really, and it's probably the same today, about 5% of the people in a given community participate in the program, which of course means 95% don't. However, all of us are involved with crime. We face it every day. So long story short, I went to the board and I said, how about if we have this one night where everybody across the country goes out on the front porch, puts on their porch light, and sits on their front porch for an hour, with the idea being that, you know, 95% of us are, if not more, maybe a little more than 95% of us are law abiding. And we're the majority, but yet at that time, very high crime rates. People were, you know, they were more concerned about, as opposed to their neighbors and being partners with law enforcement, they were more concerned about putting bars on their windows, getting security systems, all good things, but it sort of was losing the point. In other words, we were losing the war to criminals. So I said, let's have this one night. We'll all go outside. We'll put our lights on. Let's see how much crime there is. So they said, yeah, but like, how are we going to do that? How's it going to work? What's it going to look like? Long story short is we got enough chiefs from enough major cities to understand what we were saying, that we need to come out. Instead of going in, we need to come out and show our faces. So 83, 84, 85, we had National Night Out, and people liked being on the front porches and waving to their neighbors, and kind of a nice thing that we're all out against crime. And as the years went on, we promoted the idea of the block parties and the cookouts and the parades and the festivals, and getting kids involved and more things, and people started to love it. And slowly this became like it kind of became like the first responders version of July 4th. It's kind of a big party. People meet each other. They meet first responders. They get to know everybody a little bit better. They have some fun. And the idea, of course, is that the one night is not going to solve everything. But the next time you see something, or the next time somebody has a problem, or the person that you meet that night on National Night Out, there are tons of benefits. So those of you that have been involved with it kind of know what happens on that night. Not only do people have fun, but they're all excited, and they'll say, oh, next year, let's have this. Next year, we're going to have bounce houses. Next year, we're going to have face painters, all that stuff. So it kind of like grows and grows and grows, so that now we're sitting with, like, I don't know what the number is today, but it's about 7,500 communities across the country are registered. And like Justine said, like registered, what does that mean? You register online for free. And once you register, you get one of these organizational kits that talks, especially great if you're new to Night Out, it talks about, things to do, things that work, things that don't work, all the different things that we've learned over the years that can help you grow your night out. And then we send out an update, and we just did an update at the beginning of June. Then we send out another update in the middle of July. And our theory is that we don't want this to be just something where you register and that's it, big deal. We want to hold your hand all the way through this until the night comes. So we're always here to answer questions. And we try to make the event. And one thing I should say is that it's always the first Tuesday in August, except in Texas and some other select areas. And the reason for that is that Texas has a heat problem. So do you guys. But Texas got together with the chiefs and sheriffs and said, hey, look, this is what we would like to do. We want to stay with you, but we need to move to the first Tuesday in October because it's too hot. So it took probably about a year and a half for us to just figure out how this was going to work. And Texas does it the first Tuesday in October. Good for some people, not good for others, but we couldn't have people facing some of the temperatures that they were facing. So now what we'll do is, like, say, for example, you get an Orlando or Jacksonville, Florida, or New Orleans comes to us and says, hey, look, it's just too hot. And to be honest with you, it's hotter. I mean, we've done studies. When we started this thing, you could survive in some of the higher temperature areas. It's probably, I would say conservatively, it's probably 8 degrees warmer now on the first Tuesday in August than when we started this thing. So there's people that just can't do it. They can't pull off the event. So they'll send us an email, the chief or the sheriff will let us know what's going on, and we slide them over to October. So if the first Tuesday in October is better for them, then that's fine with us. We want it to work. We don't want to boil people out there where it's, 100-some degrees. And then there's a couple other ones, like the area around Las Vegas, Henderson, North Las Vegas, some of that little circle there, it's probably 115 degrees on the first Tuesday in August. So they've chosen October. So people who have a problem, it's fine with us as long as we know about it. And then we give you the opportunity when you register to put your date on there so that we know when you're doing it. Because sometimes some of our sponsors, like an AT&T, Starbucks, they want to come to events, give things away, blah, blah, blah. So we'd like to know when you're doing it. But it's fabulous. I mean, anybody in this group who's never not done it, you really ought to give it a try. Even if you start out small and it's hot dogs and hamburgers and drinks and, a visit from the department, fire truck or two, people love it. They just love it. And it's actually, just because of all the things that are going on in our country now, it's almost better now. There's more enthusiasm. Well, we had COVID too, so that gave people in. But you can see, like, even starting last year when COVID, we were getting a handle on it, and now where it's a little bit better, people are really, really anxious to come out and be with each other, to be with first responders, say thank you. It's kind of like a it's kind of like a giant love fest. Like everybody's saying thank you to everybody. Chief saying thank you to his coordinators, the citizen coordinators. The coordinators are saying thank you, police, fire, EMS for everything that you do. So it's just a night that you can't put a price on. Like the little, I can remember like some of the people ask me like, what's the best story that you've heard during NNO? And there was this one story with a man that sitting on a bench in a neighborhood in Minneapolis. They had lived there 40 years, never met each other. One was on one side of the block, one was at the other end of the block, came together for a block party. They sat down and talked. And it was the first time in 40 years that they ever met each other. And had not been for NNO, they wouldn't have met each other. But those little things, you multiply that by 10,000 times across the country, those little interactions are awesome. And then you throw in the kids, and the kids meet the officer, meet the chief, meet the fire chief, get on the truck. You can't put a price on that. So we're really proud of it. We're proud of the way that it's grown. We're proud of the creativity that's in each community, the things that people do, to raise money. Now, gosh, some of these ones, they have fireworks. They'll raise money for fireworks, and everybody knows the fireworks will take place, so they all hang around that night. They don't go home. So it's turned into something that's far more than the front porch light and sitting on the front porch for an hour. So I would love to hear your experiences, answer your questions, anything that I can do. I'd be glad if you pick my brain for a little bit and help you either get started or make yours better.
Matt, I'd like to start with a question about, it seems like, you guys really have made it, have some structure, but provided opportunity for the communities to kind of make it their own, as you mentioned. But you mentioned a lot of larger communities. If you had some, really small towns or communities that have embraced it and maybe have created some things, even though they maybe don't have a budget and don't have, that level of ability, what have you seen in some of the smaller communities?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's an awards program. I don't know, you can see it on our site, but there's like award winners for different categories. And at some point in time, I would say maybe 10 years ago, like it stopped at like, I don't know, maybe 15,000 was the population. But there were so many little population communities that they say, can we have our own category? It's not fair. We're only 4,500 and we can't compete against somebody who's 15,000. So now they do a great job. I mean, some of these ones, like maybe all the attention goes to a Minneapolis, or it goes to a LA County or a Philadelphia. But those ones in the smaller population categories, they do an amazing job, and they've built it up. There's ones we have that are maybe 3,000, 4,000. And they just do an amazing job. They look forward to it. And it's, like on some of these ones, it almost doesn't matter what the population is, because, you have Memorial Day, you have Labor Day, and you have July 4th. Basically, all of them have similar themes to National Night Out, but they're family events. This is for the community. This is for the neighbors. So you got the same hot dogs and hamburgers cooking, and you have all the festive stuff, and it's very patriotic, but it doesn't matter whether you're 500 or you're 400,000. It really makes no difference. And I've seen some of these ones in the smaller communities. They're great. They're really, really something to see.
Well, we've got a question from James in Malden, who has received one of your awards. He said last year, and so they're an award winner, but he said their big challenge is volunteers for the attractions. How have communities tried to get volunteers, and do you have some tips on maybe some ways to encourage folks to come help?
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases, it takes a little bit of time. These things it's not going to happen in the first year. But once you hold your first one, and sometimes it takes you're going to have some volunteer leaders that are going to be the ones that push this thing. But if you get the chief, sheriff, fire department out, said, hey, you guys want to help with National Night Out next year? You saw what we did this year. That's the way you get people out. They respond to each other. But I think if you can get local law enforcement behind this and say, hey, we need you next year. We need you to, they'll come out and support it.
So I'm with Malden. I'm James. We are the police department. We're the ones that hold it. We've held one pretty much every year for the last 10 years, except for when COVID got, we skipped about a year or two.
Yep.
So our biggest issue, I've reached out to our churches. I've reached out to everybody this year. I've offered to buy shirts from you guys for them because we're doing a lot more attractions. We're growing very quickly. And I cannot get these volunteers to come help out with like the bounce houses or help out with food or whatever. That's the struggle. We have fire. We have plenty of police there. It's just getting people to help. So, because right now we're staffing everything with officers, and we're really kind of taking away from the goal of having our officers interact with the community.
Right.
They're more so just, watching kids.
It's just part of the growing process. You got to use some of the things like, if you get the shirts, if you come out to the event and you volunteer, you get a free shirt and maybe something from a local business. It's the only way you can do it. I mean, the fire companies are having trouble with volunteers. So to have a volunteer for Night Out, it's not any different than anything else that's going on. It's just you got to be creative and come up with little gimmicks to get them involved. And then when you get one or two involved, you're going to get 3 or 4 involved.
Well, Matt, James, I would say you need to get Mayor Merritt out there volunteering and your council members. You have a good council, so maybe they can help with getting some volunteers. I'm sure they've been, involved, but certainly, getting them to help with it might help. Or maybe you've tried that. If so, maybe just getting them to help, at a greater level to get some of their constituents and folks to participate, because as Matt said, the idea is really, as you said it, you don't want your police to be stuck kind of doing a job the whole time. The idea is for them to interact with the community leaders. So
I've seen some of these ones, which may be an idea, is they have like a little event like in September where they honor the volunteers who helped out that night. So maybe you do something like that to see that, oh, there's volunteers behind this. So you might come up with some version of that, probably smaller at the beginning, but let them see that there's volunteers driving this thing.
And Monica put in the chat that BMW uses Eventbrite to glean volunteers. So, there are programs like that you can use for volunteers as well. We have a question from Michelle, who says she's on a college campus. And do you have ideas on how to implement it at college? Obviously, you would have to shift that from the August date to October or whatever, but have you seen it work on college campuses?
Yeah, we actually have, it started, I would say maybe 10 years ago, where there's actually one of the categories of award winners is colleges and universities. So it does work there. A lot of them do shift to October when there's students there, and they've done some cool stuff. I've seen one where they had they added a lot of fire prevention. So in the dorms, things about safety, what would happen if there was, don't do this, don't use candles, how to put out a fire with the fire extinguisher, things that related to the college and university. So yes, it does work there, and they're already there. So they're, if you get onto a quad or an area, you already got a built-in audience. It's just make the, not only do you want the students to be friends with first responders, you want to create some things about the safety related.
Great. And we're getting more comments about different tools for volunteerism. And Wilma mentioned the United Way of the Piedmont. I know Greenville United Way has one as well. Anderson probably does. So, there might be some opportunities, James and others to leverage, even your Chamber of Commerce. Most of the communities have a chamber, and others for help with some of those volunteer opportunities as well. So Matt, in a minute or so, we'll pivot and hear from some of our communities, but I have just a last couple questions for you. You mentioned sponsors at the national level. Have you found that some of those organizations, even though it's a corporate sponsorship, that they do participate in some of the local efforts? And if that's the case, what's the best way for, and it may be in the packet of material that you send out, but what's the best way for the communities to engage with some of, you mentioned Starbucks and some of the other sponsors that are in their communities?
Like three I can think of, like Starbucks, AT&T, and Renewal by Anderson are three that have people local that want to come out. You guys know the deal. I mean, they want their 10 by 10, 10 or 20 by 20 or whatever. They have lots of giveaways. They want to have interaction, but they'll come out. And that some of the giveaways that they have are nice. Academy Sports too will come out. COVID interrupted Academy Sports a little bit, but Starbucks, AT&T, and Renewal have an army of people at the local level that will come out to your event. So there, and you got to just call them. Ring's a little bit tougher. They were good at the beginning, but Ring's kind of a different story now because Amazon bought them and they're a little bit smaller. But the others will come out.
Great. And had a question from Chief Campos in Clemson, just about the switching from the August date to the October date. Is that something you said they can do it just naturally on the website? Is that right? Just put in that date?
Yeah, what they should do really, they should send an email to us. Just say that there's an issue with temperature, with heat, getting people to come out, and we'll take it, put it on record, and they can slide to October. Once you send a letter, we put it into their file in the database, so we have it on there. Especially if it's from the chief.
Right, and then you'll respond to them and let them know.
Correct.
So because he's in Clemson and their school and stuff doesn't start till after that, so I think it's a combination of the heat and kind of lack of having students on campus, that kind of thing.
It's the first day of public school, Dean, in Pickens County.
School, sorry, yeah. Well, anyway, so Chief, did that answer your question?
It did, thank you.
Okay, good.
I'll give you just my opinion of the two dates. August was the first Tuesday in August was originally designed because the other months all had something and August did not. So we wanted to make like National Night Out like the first legal holiday in August. We're still trying to do that. But it was a quiet month, not a lot going on, laid back. And that's why we selected it. We did not want to put people into high temperatures. So that's why we picked it. There was no legal holiday in August, and we picked it for that reason. And a lot of people like that it's a laid back time. When we offered Texas October, most of them like it and most of them have stayed. October is a different animal. It's a lot busier on the first Tuesday in October. There's football, there's soccer, there's PTA. There's a lot of other things going on that you're competing with. It's a little cooler, but you got to decide what you like better. Some of the people in Texas have switched back. Even though it's hotter, they switch back to August because it's more laid back and quiet. Others just absolutely love the first Tuesday in October.
Well, I think that flexibility is good for a community. And, when you started too, not a lot of schools started, public schools started that early. Typically it was around Labor Day. And now a lot of them start early. So that week is, often the last week of, people will go to the beach or whatever, or school starts. So, you're right. Times have just kind of shifted a good bit. Have one last question from Ian. Related to the sponsorships and the companies, do you have a guide of local of national reps or local reps, or how they would go through to find who the people are within their community? Is there?
Yeah, there isn't a direct connect, but we can, if they contact us, we can always help put it out to them who to contact. They, like most of them, like to be contacted by the local organization. So we can give them a contact, like Renewal by Anderson does it the flip way. They'll take all the contacts and contact them and say, hi, this is, John Jones from Renewal. We'd like to come out to your event. Because they don't get it. But if anybody has an issue with that, they can always contact us and we'll connect them.
Great. Well, Matt, thank you so much for taking the time. And we're going to let some of our community share a little bit. And you may want to jump in if you hear something or have any questions. So Justine, do you want to go ahead and start?
Sure. I would love to hear, I see Chief Campos has unmuted himself, so I think he's ready to talk about what they do.
Great.
Was I wrong? Chief Campos, you still there? Okay. Oh, maybe it was that he was getting disconnected. So I'm just going to open up to the floor. I see several people here who I know hold events. Thank you to James for sharing what you do. We'd love to hear more if you'd like to talk about that. We also have Helen Westmoreland from Oconee County Sheriff's Office and Tanya Joy from Greenville County. Tanya, if you are available to speak for a moment, I'd love to hear, as Greenville County is kind of the largest department, I would assume.
Hi, this is Tanya Joy.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. And we have our community services division has done a number of different communities that are hosting their own national night out. So what our community services division has done, our community deputies have taken the list of all the different communities that are holding a national night out event, so that the deputies, even if it's not ones that are the community deputy, but they are on patrol in that area, they can swing by there, interact, have engagement with those. So that is something that we have been doing as far as collecting who's hosting a national night out. So not only can the community deputy be a part of that, but also allow the patrol units to have engagement with the community that they're even in that area patrolling.
So it sounds like in general, the neighborhood associations are running the events.
Yes, ma'am. Some of they've had this going for the community centers, have had these national night outs for a long time. This is something that they've been a part of and host, and it just keeps spreading as the number of subdivisions and the number of communities continue to grow. Each one wants their own, and having it that way allows the deputies, because there are more deputies on patrol than there are in community, but it allows them to get a chance to come in there and have that engagement with them also.
Great, thank you. Miss Princella, would you care to share what your community does?
Hi, yes, Princella Lee Bridges. I'm Pleasant Valley community in Greenville, South Carolina. We have normally gather at the community center and block off the street, as they were saying, and have the bounce house and face painting and all of that. And we haven't done it in the last few years because of funding. That's been our issue. We've tried to use some of our community block grant funding. We've used that in the past, and we've tried to get local funding. So we've done that, and we have notified our elected officials. All of our elected officials are notified when we have it, and it's usually that first Tuesday in August, but the heat has gotten us the last couple of times, which has been very challenging here in Greenville. Well, But other than that, we've had it. Elected officials were invited, all police, fire, the fire truck comes out, does education, and invited a few other nonprofits, use it for a resource venue as well. So we've done pretty well. Just the funding has gotten scarce, and the volunteers, we try to use community members, some that are board members of our community, because we've become a nonprofit ourselves. So we kind of use our board members as well as some of the board members from the center and some of the community people from churches.
Great, thank you. Yes.
Yeah,
one thing I was thinking too, with the heat, it's not just that it's hot here in August. There's always a very high chance of thunderstorms in the afternoon. So
yes, that too. That shut us down a couple of times.
Yes. Whereas October is a little more stable in the clouds.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you for sharing. Is there anyone else who would like to talk about Chief Hamby? Greer does several different types of community engagement events, right?
Yes. So we've done National Night Out for probably, I'm going to just guess, about 8, maybe 9 years. And so when we started doing them, we had probably 3 different neighborhoods who put these on, and they were basically neighborhood driven, and police officers, we would go spend time at and kind of move around and go to all 3 of the locations. Well, probably about 2017, we kind of changed the format and made a larger central National Night Out event in near downtown and in our city park. And we made a real big deal out of it. We brought in these big inflatable jump houses and slides, and we had a lot of different nonprofit agencies set up, like Safe Kids, and brought in a lot of different departments who represent different aspects of services that we provide from our city government. And so we would get 300 to 400 people show up for that one. We did that for 3 years in a row. And then we decided to kind of go back into the neighborhoods. And so last year we reformatted it and had 4 smaller locations. And they did, honestly, they varied significantly at the 4 different locations in participation from the community. But we're going to try that again. We're sort of making some adjustments and fine tuning that. But when we do the neighborhood level ones, they tend to, they take a lot more pride in it. Some of the people who are in the neighborhood, and they do the cooking and they like to make their desserts and bring them out and share them. So, and trust me, the cops know which neighborhoods to spend more time in to get the best food. So, but anyway, so we're going to try that again this year with fine tuning some stuff from last year.
Well, and Matt, it sounds like that, as Matt Peskin mentioned, kind of the history of it, that's a little more in line with how this started. And, living in a neighborhood in Greer, I know especially during COVID, we did Wednesday night food trucks throughout 2020 to get out and have a chance to interact. And I would think, communities can do things like that or whatever else to make this, to be part of the National Night Out. And so is your goal, do you pick specific communities, or if a community or a neighborhood said, we want to be part of it, would you, have your officers float through that community as well? Or how does that work?
The most successful ones are absolutely the ones that are driven by the neighborhood leaders. And we have, a lot of partnerships here who we've had good working relations for a long time. I'm talking 20 years going back in time. And so some of those people are our go-tos when we are working on things such as National Night Out. And we do have a new neighborhood that's up near Lake Robinson called Stillwaters, and they wanted to do their first one this year. So they've stepped up,
Good.
and they're going to hold one up there. So in a common area inside their subdivision. So, but other than that, we're going to do most of the other ones down towards the core of the city in different neighborhoods. So looking forward to it.
Great.
I should have said that. I should have made it. That's a good point that he's making, because I should have said that they do usually take two. They do take two looks. It's either a centralized event where everybody comes out together, you pour all the resources into one spot, or it's block parties. And not that we would ever say that one is right or wrong, but it's whatever works. And like you were saying about, you know, I don't think any two of them are the same across the country. They're all a little bit different, but whatever works. If the centralized event works, do it. If the block party setup works, do it. Like, I'll give you one example, that the city of Minneapolis on the night of Night Out has 1,100 block parties. You can't drive anywhere in Minneapolis on the night of Night Out. They started out that you used to, I can remember they used to register, then they would ask the city for barricades. And of course, over time, they ran out of barricades. Now it's like a city of yellow tape. Everyone's got yellow tape, and then the officers try and make their way by the different precincts. They make their way around, but 1,100. So the block party style works, and the centralized events work.
Right, good. Justine, when you get a chance, could you put the link to the National Night Out website in the chat, so if someone doesn't have it already, they can get to it? And I saw Helen from Oconee County put that they use nonprofits to help set up booths, and you know, and I think Matt mentioned that when they did it centralized, they included nonprofits as well. So James, back to your thought, you know, or your question about volunteers and things, it might be some of your nonprofits might be partners that you can work with as well. And Helen, would you mind unmuting yourself and maybe share a little bit about what you guys do in Oconee and how that has evolved?
Okay, I would just in case you're right, if she's working on it, I would also love to hear from our friends in Spartanburg, and I see Miss Wilma Moore is on the call, and I was wondering if she might also share.
Yeah.
We've been involved in National Night Out, I know, for the past, I'd say 10, 12 years. And we here in the Highland community in Spartanburg, we have the Highland Neighborhood Association. And it's been a huge priority of ours to make sure we have National Night Out every year, you know, except for the years of COVID, just to work on trying to build those relationships between law enforcement and city officials and the neighborhood. We're a distressed neighborhood, and those relationships have sometimes suffered in the past. But we've worked very hard to put on a fun event every year so that we could bring everybody out and bring everybody together. And we usually do it on a block party style. We've been fortunate that we have the city of Spartanburg that invests in all of our neighborhood National Night Out events. And I think we have like about 15 neighborhoods that have the events simultaneously throughout the city. The city officials just go from one location to another, as mentioned before, and try to get around to as many as possible. But yeah, we have the DJ, we cook the hot dogs and hamburgers, or we order pizza. Sometimes that's a little bit easier. We had like dance contests. We try to have like the face painting, and the fire truck does come out and does the fire education. So we try to make it a big party for just a fun time for everybody to come out. And it's always led by our neighborhood association. We have the churches that come in. I mean, it's just something that's expected here in this neighborhood.
And you mentioned funded by the city of Spartanburg, right?
Yeah, we get huge support from the city. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think Helen is ready to share.
Hey, yes, what I did is I just contacted the local nonprofits that we work with as an agency in a lot of areas. Our local Ripple of One, which is a referral that we do for just folks that need to get off of government assistance and those type things. Our local pregnancy care center, the First Steps that works with children on the books through the Dolly Parton program and some of those things. Food Coalition about growing your own food and those type things, and just offered them free space at the event if they would simply come, and then tried to get them to be handing out ice cream. We had one church that came and actually handed out slices of watermelon, which was very smart because it was very hot. We did it in August last year. We will be looking at something in October. Last year we did one big event. We may have one event for the sheriff's office that's kind of in more of a rural area. I'm also going to reach out to our various subdivisions this year because that was something I didn't really know about until I got on this call today, which I think is a great idea. So also another resource, our local Chamber of Commerce, they did not have this last year, but they do this year, has a group of nonprofits that meet monthly. And I've been attending those meetings. So that helps you build that relationship with your nonprofits, and you begin to work together to promote each other. So your Chamber of Commerce might be a source for your nonprofit contacts. And we also have here in Oconee County a community association, which is an association of associations for homeowners associations. And I'm actually meeting with their board next week to begin proposing the idea that they ask each of their member associations to start thinking about a national night out event for their associations.
Yeah, I like the idea, Helen, of a countywide block party, kind of as Matt described that they do in Minneapolis and as they do some in Spartanburg. So that might be a great opportunity to get more of your neighborhoods and communities engaged.
And also working with the chambers and more nonprofits. That's one thing I hadn't thought of before the meeting today is, right, getting your group of nonprofits together and getting their support. And also they might bring some watermelon to the party too. We've got about 10 minutes left. Do we have, I'm looking around at everybody's picture, anyone else who'd like to share what they do, or anything in particular, kind of challenges that they've overcome, or really good tips that you'd like to share? And I'm putting in the 800 number for National Night Out and also the email info@natw.org into the chat.
I have a question for Matt Peskin. How do you measure success of these? What types of outcomes are you looking at that you can actually report back to say that this was a good investment community-wide, so that when we go out and try to do these, we can have some mile markers?
Yeah, at one point in time, we thought that wouldn't it be fun to measure crime stats for that night? Like you have all these people out, police are out, and we did it. We went to an extent to really look at major crime that night, like Houston, Detroit, and it went down. But then we realized, like, that's not really what this is about. So to measure it, it's not. I mean, major crime was down like 40% on the night of Night Out. So just to give you some perspective, in the old time, statistical world, it does work. But the real stories come from. They have a post-project report form that they return after NNO is over, and the spirit and energy that's in these reports and how excited they are about what went on. If somebody doesn't like that, I don't know what they'll like. I mean, you're talking about like I said at the beginning, it's like a love fest. That's how we measure it. There's very, very few that I can remember over 39 years where somebody said, you know what, this is awful. It doesn't really work. I'm not going to do this. It's more of where the one person was saying how it's growing and it's growing and it's growing. It grows, and it only grows because it's good. So you don't have to be a genius to figure out that this thing's working. Now, whether you put $50,000 in it or $5,000, it's, you know, it doesn't matter. You're going to see so much energy. That's what, and one of the things that, like, people will say, like, what do you like most about it now? You've seen so many of these. And for me, the best part is new ones, following new ones from the beginning. They sign up in February, March, April, and just watching what happens. Read their news articles online. That's where the story is, and that's where the results are.
Thank you.
Well, I think you heard Wilma in Spartanburg kind of talk, you know, she had that energy about what they've done in Spartanburg over the years and have grown it. And I think that is a good, you know, example. And, you know, when we did the work that you were involved with us, you know, we talked about those connections. And so, unfortunately, you know, not everything is measurable per se, but I do think, you know, that, you know, reducing the barriers of, you know, between law enforcement and the community in any way, whether it's through National Night Out or any of the other types of initiatives, that's really what you're trying to accomplish, is get people, you know, in the communities to feel, you know, and understand that law enforcement is, you know, is part of their community and has value, and for the law enforcement officers to feel and get to know people within their community, you know, other than when they're writing them a ticket or going, you know, because of a call or things of that nature. So any opportunities to build those relationships certainly create value and maybe beyond something that you can ultimately measure. But it sounds like, I'd like to say with things we do, if people keep coming back, then you must be doing something right. And I think the fact that, you know, Matt has said they've grown the programs over 30 some years, and you heard Wilma and others say they keep doing them. So, you know, obviously there must be something good in the sauce that keeps the programs coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I was going to bring it back around, as Dean was saying, to the Creating a Safer Upstate initiative of improving police and community relations. You know, how do we see that that's happened? I guess.
It also lets criminals know. We have a lot of activity going on in our neighborhood for people that come here outside of the community. It lets those people know that we care about our community and that we're here and that we're not staying inside behind closed doors anymore. So it makes a statement to that as well.
Good point.
Excellent.
Well, Justine, I think this has been a great conversation. And Matt, again, thank you so much for joining us today. And hopefully you'll be able to follow some of the communities here and keep an eye on what they're doing as they grow their programs. Justine has put the information for National Night Out and the link in the chat for anyone who didn't have it already. But Justine, why don't you go ahead and wrap us up?
Sure. And I did have to mention, thank you, Amelia, for putting the Rotary in there. We had a nice conversation last week, and contacting your local service organizations like your Rotary Club to get involved and volunteer. So I will send out a recap to everyone that will include the recording of this info session. So feel free to share that with your law enforcement offices or your community leaders. And we will also, if you are new to joining us for one of these, I'll add you to the list so that you will get other information on Creating a Safer Upstate events. And we hope to see you possibly next week on at our Beyond the Shield on using analytics to drive policing. And we really appreciate you being here with us today. So thanks very much.
Have a great day.
We'll see you next time.
Matt.
Thanks,
Matt Peskin.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.